imagine looking into the eye, looking right into the eye of a giant squid. Right there, eyeball to eyeball. And if we can bring it in and have it glom onto the sub, so much the better. People have used the word obsession about my search for the giant squid. I'd rather call it a passion. It's a passion that blends in with who I am and how I do my work and how I've always done my work. And giant squid is one of the things that I'm passionate about. They are the largest invertebrate ever to have lived on the face of the earth. We know they exist, but nobody has ever seen a living giant squid in its natural habitat. Maybe no one will. I was brought up in Rye, New Hampshire, and we lived close to the beach. After storms, lobsters would get washed in, crabs, snails, looking at the seaweed. Very exciting to a young fella. I was so interested in the oceans, in ocean animals, and in boats. I decided I wanted to be a lobster fisherman. At first for other fishermen, and eventually saved enough money that I could buy my own boat and gear. Knowing where the lobsters are means keeping up with them on a daily basis. It's a matter of being observant. I started studying squids my first year in graduate school. My major professor, Dr. Voss, asked me during the final exams what I was going to do that summer, and I said I was going back to New Hampshire to fish. Had a funny look on his face, and he said, "You know, I have a grant from the National Science Foundation to do some work on deep-sea squids. Thought you might be interested." Within a month, I discovered a new species of squid. Once the squids hooked me, that was it.
What is particularly thrilling about squids?
Yeah, I guess a lot of people would think, you know, who could love a squid? There are stories as early as the 15th and 16th centuries, something that was called a kraken, a Norwegian word. This squid of colossal size, inky black and icy cold, that would sink ships, would devour sailors and fishermen. Those stories ultimately are based on some kind of fact. They are big things, about 60 feet in total length. The eyes are located on the side of the head, and the beak or mouth is in the center of the crown of arms. So the mouth or the beak's here, and the eyes back here, and the arms coming out like that. So I think it's appropriate to call them monsters, even though for many years I resisted accepting that term. One morning in 1980, I was sitting at my microscope doing whatever I was doing at the time, working on some specimens. The telephone rang. "Clyde, we've got a squid." "Fine, what kind of a squid?" "Well," he said, "it's Architeuthis, which is the generic name for giant squid." Someone had seen this mass lying on the beach. By the time Ken hung up the phone, I was on my way to the airport. The skin was braided off, but even so, it was quite thrilling to see this animal literally in the flesh. looking through the suckers, the eyes and the mouth, different parts of the anatomy. Gorgeous. He said, "Do you want the specimen?" Do I want the specimen? Yes. So we came up with a truck, driving down from Boston to Washington with the body, with a 10-foot body in your truck, hoping that the police don't sort of look at you and say, "What are you carrying in that big coffin?" No one has ever been able to measure the suctional force of a giant squid, but with suckers up to 2 inches or more in diameter, they would pull a gigantic hickey on you. Multiply that times hundreds of suckers bearing on the surface.
How many suckers would there be total?
On a giant squid, each arm of a fully adult squid has well over 100 suckers. So 100 times 8, that's 800, let's just say possibly 1,000. Now the tentacles, the two feeding tentacles, the ones that get very long, capture the prey, instead of being in 2 rows only, they're in 4 and then in multiple rows beyond that. There would be several hundred of varying sizes from relatively small to a couple of inches. If every single sucker came to bear, there would be perhaps 1,500 or 2,000 suckers sucking away on that surface. I wouldn't want to be subjected to that. The largest eyes that exist in the animal kingdom today, and possibly the largest that have ever existed. The eyeball is as big as a human head. They can see so well. Magnificent organs. They translate the intensity of light coming down from the surface into the mid-depths and enables them to turn on their light organs and make the animal disappear. If you can imagine looking at an animal against downwelling light, the body will form a silhouette. That's lunch. But if the squid has the ability to turn on lights that match this subdued sunlight, both in intensity and color, it disappears. And I look, and the squid is gone. Incredible adaptations for survival in the deep sea. The beak has to be an incredibly powerful weapon. Very much like a parrot's beak, very sharply pointed, only a small percentage exposed to the water. There's a huge muscular ball that encases the beaks, and on a giant squid, the beaks might be as big as my hands, and the muscular ball would be this big, or even bigger than that. The job of the beak is to take bites very quickly, no chewing, just get that bite and swallow it. Their esophagus goes right through the center of the brain.